Welcome back. My name is Addie Gennett of Well Loved Clothing, and it is the final episode of Thrift Flips. Oh my goodness, this has been the most fun month of videos that I think I've ever done. I'm kind of sad, but I'm also really excited. I put so much love and so much care and creativity into every single piece, and I am so excited to drop all of these amazing pieces from every single thrift flip video from this month. And they drop on Wednesday. Oh my goodness, not even a week. So Wednesday, July 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, all of these pieces will drop on my website and you'll be able to purchase all of your favorites. And there are several surprise pieces on there too that no one has seen yet. I have some really good ones for today's final episode of this month of Thrift Flips. I have become quite good friends with my little sewing machine here. People, let me tell you about my best friend. Oh my gosh. I have really no plans today, which is almost more exciting than when I do have plans going into stuff. I have some pieces that I want to do and I have some ideas with them, but it's really just taking those inspirational photos and seeing what I can do as I go along. I'm really excited to do this final thrift flip for the month of thrift flip. So let's get started. Piece number one for today, we are taking this adorable 80s blouse and flipping it. Oh my goodness, look how cute this thing is. It's got the scrunchy bottom and those insane color block pieces in that like 80s windbreaker material, but it's really just the perfect 80s color combo with the turquoise, green, purple, yellow. Oh, I just love this. The white is still so crisp on it, the elastic on the sleeves and the bottom. So I'm in love with this piece, but I wouldn't wear it how it is right now. I want to update it a little bit and give it a little bit more flair. So my inspiration for this piece, the reason I actually bought it, was this kind of vibe. This sporty, colorful sweatshirt, almost nod to 80s more than actual 80s, and I think it would be very cute. So we're going to take this style and modernize it with a cropped short sleeve, maybe raw hem, and wear our little 80s hearts out. So let's get started.
First step is almost always going to be pinning this piece where we want that length to hit, because the majority of my tops are cropped and I want to see how much extra fabric I have to mess with later. So I've pinned right in the middle of that white line and now we're going to chop it. I didn't mark my straight line on this one like I normally would because I was just staying on that same seam that went all the way around the sweatshirt, so it was really easy to cut this one. Once I had the front and back cut all the way through, I decided to cut out the giant shoulder pads because I did not need those in my life for this sweatshirt specifically. I will reuse them in another project, but not this one, since it already has enough 80s going on. I went on a cutting frenzy, and so I chopped off the end of the sleeve to get rid of that elastic band that made it kind of bubbled.
I was just trying to mess with this and figure out what I wanted to do with this extra fabric. I thought about doing a ruffle like I did in a couple of thrift flips ago, but I don't think that this shirt will lend itself well to a ruffle, so I had an amazing idea to use this piece that we just cut off the bottom on the sleeve of this piece to make it like a really loose, billowy, puffy sleeve. Holy cow, I think it's gonna be really cool. Oh, I'm excited.
First things first, I got to cut this in half so we can have two separate pieces to make the two tubes for our sleeves. Again, not marking this because I'm cutting directly down the center. I started to pin these and then I realized that I needed to actually measure the hole in the arm so that they would be the same distance and there wouldn't be any weird gathering when I went to sew it later. So I lined up the new sleeve to the hole of the sweatshirt and measured how much I needed to cut off, and then used my measuring tape to ensure that I was cutting the correct portion off the sleeve because I wanted to have more purple than white, so I was cutting more white off the other side than purple on one end of the sleeve. I ended up cutting 2 inches total, but I cut 1.5 inches off of the white side and 1/2 inch off of the purple side. With it all marked and measured, I cut off those pieces, pinned it all back together second time around, and then sewed the two edges together to make a tube for the sleeve. I sewed the piece front to front and cut off the excess to give it a zigzag stitch to finish the inside edges of the sleeve. Copied the same pattern of cutting, stitching, sewing, all the good things on the other sleeve, and now we can attach the sleeve to the shirt. After figuring out which way I wanted the sleeve to face, I flipped the main shirt inside out and then laid the sleeve right side out inside of the sleeve that was already there. Ooh, that's a lot of sleeves. I need these to be face to face, and this was just the easiest way to do it. So once I got the sleeve inside of the shirt, I started pinning all the way around, starting at the bottom seam to match those up, and then pinning all the way around the sleeve. I like to do all my pinning at once, and so I completed the same thing on the other side of the shirt, and then I took it to my sewing machine, where I stitched along the pin line, trimmed the excess, and did a zigzag stitch to keep keep those hems nice. For the hem of this shirt, I wanted to leave it raw just to modernize it a little bit more, but I don't want it to fray too much, so I sewed a seam across the whole bottom about 1/4 inch up from the hem, which will allow it to fray a good bit, but it won't allow it to fray past that seam. I then just roughed up the edge, which was pretty easy because this fabric really likes to fray, and we're done!
Holy cow. This is so much better, and I didn't even change like the style of it that much. I just modernized it a little bit. Favorite part is that this was the waist, so it has pockets in it right here and on the back of the sleeve. So just kind of funky, wanted to keep them because it just kept the shape really cute. Loving how this turned out. Just a little puffy, super cropped, and that raw edge just gives it another vibe. So it's not all that 80s knot. Oh, I love this one. Number 2 is one that I have had for a very long time. So it is this adorable vintage polka dotted dress. It has a drop waist, zippers, and buttons down the back with this adorable little tie, and the peachy color is just so cute. That tulip sleeve, it's just got really great details throughout the whole thing. I thought it would have a lot of thrift flip potential. My idea for this one is inspired by these adorable vintagey looking sets. They're very modern and wearable, have a very vintage feel, like 60s, 70s with a big old headband. And the waistband on this, I actually have used as a headband before. So this is going to be very quintessential well-loved clothing flip because we're taking this dress and making it into an adorable little set, and I cannot wait. Let's get started.
Starting off once again by putting this thing on and pinning where I want that waist to hit, laying it flat and making sure to button it up all the way in the back so that our cuts are correct. It is missing a button, which we're going to reattach later, but for now I'm just pinning it so that it'll be straight. That pin was about 3 inches up, and so I'm measuring several different places along this dress and marking them, and then doing one straight line across so I know exactly where to cut. This was very beneficial too because I needed enough fabric to fold over to make a facing for the waistband. So it was great that the crop matched perfectly up with the amount I needed. Once I had it all marked, I cut through all of this fabric to make the crop in the skirt. Instead of using another piece of fabric for that facing, I just left those couple extra inches at the top of the skirt to do a facing that way. So we're taking this to the flat iron for hopefully the last time so I can go get my iron sometime soon, but still don't have one. So I am folding it down all the way past the waistband so I have a little bit of wiggle room and ironing that flat. This piece is going to act as our facing, so I need this to be flat and crisp and good to go. Once I'm done ironing the initial fold around the whole top of the skirt, I am then folding 1/8 of an inch at the bottom of it and ironing that flat, which is going to be the place where we sew down that seam so we don't have any loose ends on the inside of the skirt. Ironing that 1/8 inch down all the way around and not sewing it yet because we need to figure out our elastic first. I just wanted to get that out of the way because the elastic is easier and the ironing takes forever. So there used to be elastic in the skirt of this dress, but it just wears out over time. So I'm cutting 2 new pieces of elastic to go into this waistband. I need it to be about 2 inches smaller around the waist for the elastic to actually work as elastic. So I pinned that and measured out my elastic length that it needed to be using some elastic scraps from a different project. So yay, recycling! And now the fun begins because this elastic getting in here is a bit of a process. Y'all have seen me do the casing for elastic before, but this is a completely different process where I'm separating the 2 pieces of elastic into 2 because of the zipper and then attaching them to the actual waistband. So I pinned the edges of the elastic to the edges of the waistband that I needed to attach it to and did 2 double stitches on either side of each piece of elastic to anchor them down so we can do the seam across the center. After those anchor seams are sewn on the edges, I can now do the straight seam across the elastic that's going to actually hold it in place on the skirt, but I wanted to make sure that I was keeping in line with the seams that were already on the waistband. So I marked where I needed to stitch on the elastic and stretched the elastic so that it laid flat on the skirt so it could do what it's supposed to do. With the elastic now properly attached inside the skirt waistband, I can sew down the facing piece to hide divide the elastic and create the waistband. After doing this around the whole back, I can then do it on the front where I had to gather and pin some pieces since the fabric was gathered on the front, which completes the skirt. So we can move on to the top by doing the same facing technique that we did on the skirt, folding that inch down and then 1/8 of an inch to make that perfect hem. Sewed that facing down 1 inch up where the 1/8 of an inch fold was, and reattached the button that was missing earlier from the extra fabric that had a button on it too, conveniently. Just used a thread and needle to reattach that button, and once it was done, we were done!
I love this one. This is my perfect little orange piece from this video. I have to have one every single video. I loved keeping the original shape, but just kind of updating it to be a more modern silhouette. I also had this adorable little piece in my hair because this was a sash that was around the waist to begin with. So it can be worn around the waist or the neck or the head, whatever your style is. So I am loving this one. The little puff on the sleeve, how cropped it is, and I actually pinned it in the back because this one is gonna end up being a large. So that's why the shirt is a little bit bigger. So keep your eyes peeled for the large range of sizes that I will have in my drop. Oh, this one's so cute. Okay, I am saving the last one for the craziest one. So this is gonna be quite a transformation. Hopefully, I'm hoping it'll be quite a transformation, so stick with me. It is this blob of fabric at this point. It is a maxi dress, and it's an oversized kind of flowy drop neck slip flutter sleeve. I don't even know, but I was so drawn to this fabric. It has these amazing little beads and this floral on it, a stone gray blue. So it's really just super flattering, but the shape is not a gal's best friend. So my idea for this one is to make this kind of top. I am hoping that I'll have enough fabric at the end of making the top to make a little skirt so we can have an adorable little set. And I had two conflicting ideas, so it's this one and this one. And I love the idea of having the long sleeve, but I also love the idea of having a long skirt with the crop top. So we'll see what we can actually do with this piece. So it'll be quite a challenge, but I am up for it, and I think it is a great final piece for the final video of Month of Thrift Flips. So let's get started.
I wanted to do a skirt, so I'm gonna cut the skirt first and then see how much fabric I have to make the top, and we'll go from there. I pinned where I wanted the cut to be for how long I wanted the skirt to be and chopped it off. Conveniently, this dress came with a slip, so I don't have to find one, and so I'm cutting the slip to match the same length as the skirt because the fabric is rather sheer and we don't want our skirts to be see-through. I pinned front to front of the skirt and the lining so I can sew that together and then create a casing for the elastic. So I'm top stitching the lining and the skirt together all the way around, leaving about an 1/8 inch seam allowance, and measuring and marking my elastic for how long I want my waistband to be. I didn't want to create a whole other waistband for this skirt, and I know of a way that I can do it where I basically just create a casing out of the top of a piece of fabric sewn together that I already have. And so I'm ironing down the top seam that I already stitched to make sure that it's all flat and straight across, and then top stitching the two pieces together again to create the casing for my elastic. So basically I'm just making a casing out of the skirt that I already have, and that casing is going to be 1 inch wide because my elastic is 3/4 inches. I left a hole in the seam across that waistband so that we can put our elastic through, and so I'm using a safety pin to pull my elastic through that waistband. So I'm putting the safety pin through and then poking it through that hole and basically just inching it around the whole waistband to make the elastic waistband. My elastic meets back up on the other side, and I attach them and then sew down the piece that I left open to create that waistband, which means we can move on to the shirt now, and I'm so excited. So I'm actually going to use the back as the front because it has the V-neck, and the technique that I know uses a V-neck to create a wrap shirt. So I'm measuring 18 inches down, and I'm going to mark across the whole front of the shirt and then chop that off, saving those extra bits for later because we are going to need them. I'm chopping up the center of the shirt also because we're going to be making a wrap top, opening the shirt to lay flat and then measuring 3 inches up from the bottom of the center panel and marking a line straight across that. Then I am marking from that 3-inch point on the corner of the side panel all the way to the point of the side panel. So I'm basically just making like 2 wings that are going to be angled from that straight line in the center. Then cutting through that whole line from one point across the center to the other side point, which is going to create our wrap top. I then need to cut the front pieces so that they're angled rather than having the weird points of the V-neck. I'm matching up the seams and then laying them flat on top of each other and cutting from shoulder to the point of the side panel in a straight line. With the base of the shirt done, we can now use the bottom panel that we saved from cutting it off earlier to create our facings, our bias tape, our ties, everything. So I'm cutting that straight down the center, and I'm going to use 1/2 for all of the facings and 1/2 for the ties in the shirt. I'm going to face the front points first, and so I'm using extra fabric that I had from a different part of cutting the shirt and making a 1-inch strip that goes from the shoulder to the front point and top stitching that down so we can create the facing. And here comes the tricky part, because we're more making bias tape than facing, and so I have to fold it 1/8 of an inch down towards the front and also another 1/8 of an inch so that it makes a nice roll and does the same thing that facing does, where it hides your seams but doesn't give a bulky hem. I could iron this, but I don't really feel like it, to be honest with you, and so I'm just going to use a heck of a lot of pins to finish off this shirt. After a lot of folding and rolling on both sides of this shirt, I'm taking it to my sewing machine and stitching that down flat, staying right in the center of that 1/8 inch fold to make a really clean line, as you can see here. So once that is done on both sides of the neckline, I am now going to use the piece that I cut earlier from the bottom and cut it in half so that I can make the facing for the bottom of the shirt. Then laying my shirt flat and putting the long strip that I just cut on top of that, and then top stitching that down so we can create the facing. I turned off the excess because we're going to be making another level of bias tape, so it needed to be about 1 inch thick rather than the 2 inches that it is currently. So I chopped that off and started my roll. Creating that bias tape again, rolling it up about 1/2 inch this time, and then rolling it another 1/2 inch to give it a little bit more of a formidable hem. Again, I'm simply double rolling and pinning all the way across the bottom, and then taking it to my machine, double stitching the edge, and then stitching all the way around across that bias tape, creating yet another absolutely beautiful hem. All that's left is to create the straps that are going to be the ties for the front of the shirt. So I'm taking the other piece of leftover fabric from earlier and folding it in half to create a tube that's going to end up as our strap, and sewing it all the way down the side of that strip. After finishing those strip stitches, I used my hands instead of my loop hook on this because I was worried that the fabric was so flimsy that it would fall apart if I used my loop hook. So here I am just kind of scrunching it through there, and it wasn't super difficult because it's not a long or difficult piece of fabric to do this to. So I'm pulling it through and making a strap. Don't think it didn't get aggressive though, because it always does with these things. Once both strips were complete, I attached them by overlapping the outside of the tube to the inside of the point that we had created earlier, sewing one line down the top of that, stitching that a couple of times to make sure that it would not budge, and it is finished. Oh!
This one is gorgeous. There's also a few ways to wear this top. Let me show you. Little wrap top, very cute. Love it. Taking after the original idea, and how cute! Oh, so all of these adorable ways. Little cowl neck in the front, tie in the back. So adorable, and I love these little flutter sleeves. And then this skirt with this asymmetrical hem just ended up being so cute, and I think the perfect addition to this more showy top. The fabric is amazing, and the beading is so good, and I love the cowl in the back, the tie, everything. It just turned out way better than expected, and I'm obsessed with it. Oh, look how cute. Thank you so much for joining me on this month of Thrift Flips. It has been so much fun to share so much of my heart with y'all. I really love doing Thrift Flips because it's where I get to share so much of my creativity and so much of who I am and my design eye. So I'm so excited to share it with you on July 15th, which is this coming Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to share all these pieces and so many more that y'all haven't even seen. So head on over to my Instagram so you are the first to know when all of these pieces go live on my website. Let me know which is your favorite flip below, and subscribe to my channel, and just know that you are well loved. I'll see you next week. Bye!